and why we went into Vietnam and how we got out of it. But my name is Richard White. I'm born and raised in Baton Rouge area, live in Central now. I joined the Marine Corps in 1961, right out of high school. A bunch of guys that went camping. I enrolled at LSU, and a bunch of guys went camping. I graduated with Sitting Bull Falls, New Mexico, and I had an accident out there, broke both my ankles. So needless to say, I didn't start LSU when I should have. So all my friends had started, and I said, well, I'll just go ahead and get my service time over with. So I joined the Marines at that time. And I ended up spending right at 5 years in the Marines. I signed up for 4, and then when things started heating up overseas, I extended my time for 6 months. And then when they sent me to Vietnam, the government extended me an extra 4 months. So I ended up putting 6 years and 10 months in there. I mean, 4 years and 10 months, sorry. But anyway, I went to Vietnam in June 16th of 1965 was when we landed there. We came off of a ship, came down nets like you see in the old war movies, and got on the PT boats and landing craft and went in. Fortunately, we were prepared, but there wasn't nothing going on the beach, so we were very fortunate. But I told Adam when he was at the house, it's a weird feeling. You prepare all your life, or all your time in the Marines to go to battle and fight. And when they started handing out the ammunition aboard the ship, there was no feeling in the world like that. It was for real. They were handing out hand grenades and live ammunition, whereas before you may have had some blanks ammo, and you never fooled with hand grenades at all unless you were in a setting where you had trainers there with you to handle them. But this here, they were handing out live hand grenades, and that's the most butterflies I've ever had in my whole life. It was really tough. But anyway, we made it through that. We made it to the landing, and when we first got to Vietnam, our main thing was security at the Da Nang Air Base. And we sat there and set up security. We had little short patrols around the base, but nothing major. And it was a fairly secure area, but there was really no secure area in Vietnam. We did have a couple guys that got hurt, stepped on landmines. There was a lot of that over there. And so after that, we took off and we went out and we patrolled. And at first, the Vietnam wanted just the ARVN soldiers. That's the Army of Vietnam, the South Vietnamese soldiers, to do everything around the bases because of the population was so heavy in that area. But anyway, we started going out on the patrols too, and it's just hard to explain how things are over there. It's most people think with the bullets and the booby traps and things like that, they bad. And we lost a lot of, I probably lost half my platoon before I left there. But that was the living conditions under what all these, it's just unbelievable. Your clothes rot off, your boots fall apart, you know. And this ain't just happened in Vietnam. This happened in all wars. When you see these men, and I'm actually right now, whenever you see a veteran, thank him, especially a combat veteran. He has seen it all, so it's tough. But they do it for a reason. They love their country. Like and there's no other country in the world like this. People who live in America don't realize what they got here. You know, it's just unbelievable when you see how other countries live. But this here I brought, this is just something, this is an old mess kit that y'all probably all seen them anyway, but in Vietnam, this is what you ate out of if you was got a hot meal every now and then. But this right here is the key to survival in Vietnam. This is a C-ration opener. It opens all your cans of food that you got in the field. So, and these things here work great. Most people don't know it, but that's what they for. Open that C-ration. And I've got some pictures that I want to pass around, and y'all can just take a glance at them and see what y'all think about them. You go at them, you pass these around. And as you look at them, if you got a question about them, just ask me about it. I'll be glad to answer anything. Oh yeah, yeah.
Please don't bend them. Be careful how you deal with them.
Those are just pictures from over there that I go to reunions about every other year, and I've been doing it for about the past 20 years. I still stay in touch with probably 12 or 15 guys that I serve with that after 50 years, you know, we still stay in touch. It's a camaraderie that you build when you serving with guys and protecting each other. It's something I love every one of them. And I can say that to them, and I can say that to you, and that we're all men, but there's no greater love than that love that for that fellow man that's watching your back. So, you know, it's, I stay, like I say, I stay in touch with all of them and love them all, and they love me, so that's important. And I got a picture of a few of them in those that's passing around there. There was a mountain in the area where we were at. It was called Marble Mountain, and that's mainly where we worked at, was in the Marble Mountain area. And in one of the pictures, you'll see it, the mountain, and we didn't realize it back then, but the Viet Cong actually had a tunnel under that mountain, and they had a hospital under there, and food and cafeterias and places where they stayed at. About halfway up the mountain, there was a monk monastery up there. And in that monastery area, they had a huge cave and a big Buddha in that cave. And it's hard to believe that Buddha was up halfway up that mountain like that, and in that cave, and there was a light, a hole up in the top of the mountain, and the light shined through. But we had a listening post up there. I don't know what we was listening for way up there. There wasn't nothing going on the mountain. But anyway, we had a great experience in being there. It was a political war more than anything, and I tell people that. And you know, we went over there with all the good intentions in the world to stop the spread of communism in Vietnam. They had fought over there for years and years. The French and then the Japanese came in and took over the country. But then we moved in, and I'll tell you, the politicians in this country, well, it was bad. I had no respect whatsoever for President Johnson at the time. I think he prolonged our time in Vietnam. He tried to run the war from Washington, D.C. You couldn't do that. You know, he didn't let the generals do do what they were supposed to do, or the fighting men. Mostly when we was over there, we worked in small units. Most of the time it was either a squad or something like that. You went over as a battalion, then you would separate, and most of the time there's 10 or 12 guys on patrols. So we were very fortunate that we could watch each other, because, like I said, the politicians weren't the best. McNamara, he was probably the next worst guy. He may even top Johnson. He was my wife always said, you got intelligent people, but intelligent people ain't necessarily smart people. And that was what these guys were. They were intelligent, but they weren't smart, you know. So she made good sense there. But anyway, it was some tough times, but we survived it all. I would not give up that experience for nothing. It taught you how to survive and how to trust your fellow man. I know in one of the pictures I had one black guy in my squad. His name was Robert Brown. He was one of my fire team leaders. People asked me sometime about how the race relations were. We never had problems, never. And that was in 1965, which was, I think the race relations were starting to get bad in 63 or 64. I'm not sure when, but when you're in combat and watching out for each other, it don't matter what color your skin is. Just, you're looking out for each other. So, and I know they did have some problems later. Drugs. You hear a lot about drugs over there. I never saw any drugs over there. I don't doubt they may have had some, but like I said, I never had to deal with any. We were tickled to death when the helicopters came in and dropped us a couple hot beers every now and then. You know, so I mean, that was our treat, was getting that hot beer. But as far as and then we went out on an operation. One time we was out, I guess, about 6 weeks, and we went out on the operation with just rifles and what they call a light marching pack, which was you carried an extra pair of socks, extra pair of underwear, and just some maybe a can of sea rations or something. But anyway, while we was out there, we were supposed to be going for a few days, and we was out there for 6 weeks. And by the time we got back in, everything on us was rotted. And so the helicopters would drop off our mail, ammo, and food, sea rations. But the sea rations actually sustained all of us. We lived through it, and so it wasn't the best stuff, but we made it. And I'll tell you what, my first guy, I don't know where the pictures is at, they had a guy in there, and he was the first man in my squad that got wounded, and it's something that ate on me for a long time. I was telling Adam about it the other day, and he survived, but I blame myself a lot of times for it. You know, I was supposed to be the guy that protected these other guys. I was the squad leader over there, and I had 10 other guys in my squad, but we got caught in a couple ambushes over there, so it was almost impossible to stay out of the ambushes, to be truthful with you. We never fought any big battles. In the area we worked in was snipers and booby traps mostly. But I can tell you one thing, it was hairy every day. Every day that you set foot in that soil over there, you could lose your life. And I'm sure it was like that in a lot of other places, you know, in different wars. I think of Korea and that fight there with the guys fighting in below freezing temperatures for days and on end, and you know, and that was tough. For us, it was rain, and we were actually at night. And I was telling Adam at night the darkness in Vietnam was total darkness. If there wasn't no moon and sun that night, I mean moon and stars that night, it was unbelievable. You held on to the man in front of you, or you would lose him. It just was complete, total darkness. There was no electricity. We take all this for granted. In that area we worked in, the people lived in grass huts. They had just a mattress for a bed. They cooked their food outside most of the time on campfires. And so at night when you went on a patrol, it was tough. We had a compass that we used, and it had a illuminated dial in it so you could tell which way you're going. But if you had ambushes, and it was raining so hard you couldn't see your hand in front of your face anyway, you would just sit there and shiver. It was so cold. You don't think of cold in Vietnam, but it was very cold. But like I said, you were scared that somebody would hear your teeth rattling, you know, so. But anyway, as the things are passing around, anybody got some questions, anything?
What was in your sea rations? Like, what was it?
Well, sea rations was different types. You had, it was all canned goods, but you had a meat one, you had pork and beans, you had some spaghetti, but this it's kind of like, what is it, not like ravioli. Ravioli's a treat. This stuff here was, and in it you'd get a little pack of cigarettes, and it was either, I think, 4. If it was an unfiltered cigarette, you got 4, 5, and if it was a filtered cigarette in there, you got 4. And they were so old that the cigarettes, when you open the pack, they were brown. I mean, they were World War II cigarettes, but there was leftover sea rations from World War II. But you got a little piece of pound cake normally in there, or a little can of fruit cocktail. Those were the small cans. They had ham and lima beans, and I can't say what we call those. It's not appropriate. But anyway, it was bad stuff. But every now and then there was a few people that liked the ham and lima beans, and you would trade off for it. But certain ones, people like different things, you know, so I never did gain a taste for them though.
I got a couple things. I don't know if y'all want to ask questions. One thing I want to ask right now was with the news coverage of it, the story.
Oh yeah. Early in August of '65, we went into a village, and this village had been swept 2 or 3 times before, and the companies that had swept the village had taken some pretty bad casualties. So we came in on Amtraks, which is big track vehicles that we could either ride in or ride on top of to get to the area. But as soon as we got off the Amtraks and started on line, we started taking fire from the village, and had 3 or 4 guys got knocked out quick. And so anyway, our captain had told us, he said, if we take fire and take casualties, we're going to destroy the village. And so we went in and we started destroying the village. And by saying destroy, we weren't destroying the people. We were there to protect people, not kill people. But anyway, we started burning the huts and stuff, because the villagers were concealing these people, and they weren't helping us, and they weren't helping themselves. But I know they was in a bad situation over there. You know, they were damned if they do and damned if they don't. So, but anyway, on this particular sweep that we call it a search and destroy, we had Morley Safer with us. He was a CBS newsman, and he kind of gave us a real bad write-up, said that we'd killed some innocent people, had burned all their homes, which we did. We burnt the homes, but he didn't tell the whole story, and it went on the national news at home, and it really turned people off against the veterans over there that was fighting. And he didn't say that 2 or 3 times before that men had went through the village and had gotten killed over there. He didn't say nothing about that. He just chose to tell what was happening with us. And like I said, even as we got on the Amtrak to leave after we had swept through the village, we started taking fire as we were getting on the Amtrak. So these Vietnamese, Viet Cong, had dug tunnels and stuff all throughout that village, and they were hiding in that village in the tunnels. And it was almost impossible to find the tunnels. So even though we destroyed all the huts that was on top of the ground, they were still there firing at us. So, but anyway, by him putting that on the news in the United States here, it cut us a lot of flack over there. So, and I still to this day blame a lot of our problems over there on the news media, just like the news media is today. You know, I take news media with a grain of sand. You never know. So.
Y'all got any questions?
I know there was a lot of protests of the war, and
I
know people when they came back that they were like some of them weren't treated right. Did you have any like negative experiences?
Yeah, I was very fortunate that I was in the early part. When I came home, there was no homecoming, no celebration, but my family was there, and that was the most important thing, of course. But my son came home. He was in the Marines and came home from Desert Storm, and we must have had 200 people at the airport to meet him when he came home. So to me, when I came home, it was indifference. Nobody really questioned me about what I did or what went on over there. It was like I never was there, you know. So I mean, they just and later on they had some real bad protests and stuff. But like I said, I was fortunate that I got to come home a little early. But like I said, nobody ever, even the service organizations. One of these patches here, this Vietnam Veterans of America. I belong to this organization here. I belong to the Marine Corps League and a Disabled Veterans Association. I'm a life member of those 3. And we never were invited to join the American Legion or the VFW. Nobody ever approached me about joining them, which is, I know you folks are young and don't know, but I mean, that's part of the camaraderie of the services, is that these organizations come and get you enlisted in their organization. Nobody ever approached me on that. And so that's why this organization started, Vietnam Veterans of America. They said, well, if none of the other ones is going to invite us to join, we'll start our own. And that's what we did. And it's still going today. But now, the American Legion and VFW have changed their ways, so to speak, and there's a lot of Vietnam veterans in both of those organizations.
Anybody else? Go ahead, anything.
somebody drop stuff off for y'all?
Fairly regular. We rolled in a lot of them, and they came in and gave us a lot of help. And we were fortunate in that we never fought against any heavy units, so to speak. Up in the northern part of Vietnam, around Hue and Khe Sanh, which was one of the big battles up there, helicopters were used exclusively. The Army probably used more helicopters than we did, and I know y'all too young to remember, but in 1965, when we were there, they had a tremendous battle. I can't think of the name. It was an Army outfit, and they really got waxed bad right at the beginning of the war. And they were a helicopter unit. They came in helicopters and went out in helicopters. They got put into a bad situation and got ambushed and really got hurt bad. They lost a couple hundred guys, so it was a bad situation. But helicopters were good. Believe me, when you needed them, I was evacuated in one, so I was very happy for it.
Oh, was the training hard?
The training, unbelievable.
Tell us about it. How was it? What was, like, what did you have to do?
Well, I stayed a grunt for the whole time that I was in the service. A grunt's an infantryman. I never realized there were so many different MOSs. That's your military occupation specialty. I thought the Marines was just grunts. You know, I thought everybody was a grunt. But in Vietnam, you have 259, almost 300 million people that serve there. Of those 3 million people, of them 3 million people, only about maybe 300,000 of them, 10%, actually fought in combat. You had bartenders over there, you had guys running clubs, you had communicators, you had just anything that you could. Most of them were support people. People don't realize how much support it takes to feed and take care of all these guys in the field. And but my training before we went to Vietnam, we actually went through what they call a Raider school, and we were supposed to. We done helicopter rappelling. We rappelled out of helicopters. We rappelled off of cliffs. We done scuba diving. We done rubber raft training, where we got on a paddle out at night and got on a submarine and came in and climbed a cliff and rescued a bunch of people and came back down, got on the raft and went back out to the sub. There was an area in Okinawa called the Northern Training Area. Unbelievable, unbelievable, the terrain and the conditions there that you trained under. We done escape and evasion there, where they would actually put you in a sweat box and lock you up, and you had to escape from it and survive on your own for 2 or 3 days. So we were well trained, and I was so very thankful for that I had good training before we went to Vietnam, because a lot of the guys in the younger guys at the end of the time was really struggling with, because they didn't have the training we had. I think somebody wants to come in.
Anybody else before I ask something?
But,
No, at the start of this, you said.
well, I can't hear you.
Sorry. At the start of this, you had said the reason you enlisted when you did is because you didn't get to LSU in time after you had an accident. Had you enrolled in LSU and stayed there, do you think you still would have enlisted?
They would have what now?
Going to college, would you have still enlisted
No. Maybe later I would have after I flunked out of LSU. I never was a great student. But I actually enrolled at LSU to become a history teacher. That's what I wanted to be, a history teacher. So, under the circumstances, I had two friends that had already been and joined the Marines when I joined. And then after that, two of the guys that actually went to LSU that I was supposed to start with, they flunked out and they joined the Marines. So I'd have probably ended up in the Marines no matter what, you know. But I don't regret 1 second of it, you know. And I was fortunate after I got out the service, I went to work for a chemical company down in the Gosma area, BASF, and I worked there for 30 years. And I retired from there, and I've been retired 20 years now. So I was very fortunate, you know, that my life turned out the way it has. And I can't leave out my spouse. She stuck with me from the beginning, from the get-go. We've been married 51 years, and I put her through some misery. So, but she hung in there, so that's important. Most of the people, I've been to the wall up in D.C. several times. It never ceases to grab me every time I go up there. And what is hard to believe is you students look at me as an old man, which I am, but all of those names on that wall, that's young folks, not much older than y'all in here. I mean, we had the wall came to Zachary one time, and that's what I try and tell the students who came there to look at the wall. It was a moving wall, and I tell them, because I kind of walk the front of it, you know, and talk to people and let them know what it was about. But I say, when you look at those names, don't look at me. I say, those names on that wall were people who weren't much older than you. Probably, I think the average age over there was about 20 or 22 on the wall. I turned 22 years old over there, and I was an old man. When I turned 22, I was the oldest guy in my squad. So all my guys were probably 18 or 19 years old that served with me. So they were a bunch of young ones.
You ready, Vic? How many of you want to ask something that's probably more controversial? Anybody? I'll ask some, if you're comfortable talking about it, as much as I mean, not, I get it. When you are, first, I guess two things. Number one, when you are under fire, what is that, I mean, how, because we'll never understand what that's like.
And nobody will never understand it. And I don't say that lightly. It's just something that when you have somebody out there shooting at you and trying to kill you, and that's what they're trying to do is kill you, there's nothing like that you will ever experience, you know. We got caught in a couple ambushes, and just fortunately, we didn't lose a person. We were walking across a dike, and I mean, the area I worked in, most people think of Vietnam as being the jungles. Where I worked at was nothing but rice paddies. I mean, for as far as you could see, it was just nothing, you know. And then you'd have a village, and they'd have hedgerows around the village, so to keep people from going through too easy. But anyway, so when you cross these rice paddies, most of the time you sit up on one side, and your point man or a couple guys would go across, and when they would go across, you would be sitting there waiting in case they got caught in the fire. But most of the time, the VC got a little wiser, and they let people start getting out there. And like I said, we got caught a couple times out in the open, and the dirt was kicking all around us. And it's just fortunate that they were such bad shots. They were terrible. They couldn't hit the side of a barn. And if I'd have had one Marine over there, he'd have got them all. I'm telling you, he would have got them all. But these guys were just bad shots. And so we were fortunate in that respect that, now they could set good booby traps though, you know, and they'd done that a lot. And they had a lot of punji stakes in our area where we were at. And the villagers over there were, I won't say they were pro VC, but they didn't help us a whole lot either. So, and the women were just as bad as the men. I mean, you couldn't trust the women over there. They would hide the VC, and we actually had them shoot at us before. So, I mean, it was a war where you didn't know who your enemy was.
Did you have any kids attack?
Huh?
Did you have any kids attack you?
I never had them attack me, but they say that they had in a couple incidents over there where they actually had grenades and threw them at the buses, so with the troops on them. So they had they were always there. The little kids over there were the ones who suffered the worst, actually. So, and we had our corpsmen with us. Our corpsmen were like medics that came in and helped take care of the villagers and stuff. There was I'll never forget when I was on a patrol, we could hear kind of a wailing noise, you know, like somebody was really hurting. And so we had the corpsman with us, so it was coming out of one of the huts, so the corpsman went in there and we went in to check, and it was an older woman in there, I mean an older lady. And she had, I don't know what, she had some kind of breast cancer or what, but I mean, all of this was just rotten looking. And so the corpsman patched her up best he could, and then we took her in with us to bring her back to one of the hospitals. But the kids over there, they had sores and stuff on them every now and then, so we tried to help the villagers as much as we could, you know, when we could. And we were going through a village one time, they had an old duck there, and we killed the duck. We was hungry. So the old villager there, he said, he was raising the devil at us because we killed his duck. But anyway, so we gave him some piastres. That was some Vietnamese money, and then he was happy as he could be. He cooked the duck for us. But you know, those people, they were very poor. They were very poor. Probably what we made in a month was like their yearly salary, if they had a salary at all. Most of them just lived off the land. So, but like I said, it's quite an experience.
Anybody have anything? Okay.
Earlier we were talking about, you know, the news anchors and all those people that would mess y'all up when it came to how people thought about y'all at home. Did they ever, like, really get in the way of things and make things more difficult when it actually came to them being out in the field with y'all?
He's talking about, so on the news, how they painted bad pictures of you with their stories. When they were there, did they ever get in your way? Like the CBS guy, was he in the way?
No, they never really got in the way. They just kind of hung to the side, but we had to protect them. That was our job, to protect them, even though we didn't want to. And it's a terrible thing to say, but I always said that if I knew Morley Safer was going to write that report, he wouldn't have come home. I'm telling you, he done us in, you know, and it was a bad report. And I had no love for those people over there. Today on the internet, I was looking at Jane Fonda. I know y'all know Jane Fonda, but there's no love lost on Jane Fonda amongst Vietnam veterans. during the war in 1972, she actually went to North Vietnam and posed with the North Vietnamese soldiers on a big old cannon that they had over there. And some women organization up in Sparta, New York, had elected her to some prestigious thing. And the building that they have this award ceremony in, the town of Sparta, New York, had actually donated this to this organization, and they withdrew all their funding. They said, if you're going to put Jane Fonda in this, we ain't supporting you no more, because Jane Fonda definitely hurt the veterans when she did what she did, and no Vietnam veteran will ever forgive her for that. She apologized, but apologies never has been accepted.
Anybody else? What?
What's the closest y'all ever been to the enemy when y'all was fighting?
The closest
Close proximity.
we've run into them.
Range?
Like face to face.
Yeah, at night, my point man, it was right about dusk, and we was in a confined area, and he came around the corner, and this guy came around the corner. I mean, they just like this, and they both startled each other so much they just went to the side, and the guy got away. You know, I mean, it was just, but that's, you had pretty close contact with them. Not all the time, but every now and then you did. This guy here, he was my point man. His name was Johnny Strawn. He was super. He was from Arkansas, and it don't matter what, at night I could tell him, give him coordinates on a map, and say we had to go out 1,000 clicks this way. We got a checkpoint, 1,000 clicks this way, and then come back in. And he was like a bloodhound. I mean, this guy was unbelievable how good he was. He was something. But he passed away a couple years ago.
Hey,
So like when y'all went into a village, y'all weren't like attacking the villagers.
Like what now?
Like when y'all went into a village and like y'all like went into the village and like y'all had to like destroy the huts and everything.
Not all the time, but that particular one we did.
So like y'all weren't always like fighting the villagers themselves.
No. Most of the time when we went through the villages, they didn't even pay no attention to us. The villagers that lived within the village, we would patrol through, and we might be looking for some trap doors, or like they had hay or something, or walk into the huts and stuff, you know, and look and see who's in there. But as far as destroying villages, that particular village was destroyed for a reason, because we had taken so many casualties there before. So that was why that particular village was, but most of the time, as a matter of fact, that's the only village that I can remember that we actually destroyed, and we took casualties at other points, but that was a bad village to start with. So that was our objective, was to stop the killing there. So
the reason we talked about that was because we talked about like My Lake.
yeah, My Lai.
Later on, you know, all the stuff like that. Well, I say My Lake.
Yeah.
All the other instances where they did
Right.
kill for just to kill, but that was later on.
Right.
Once
Right.
we were heavily into stuff like that. So he was early on enough to where it was probably
Yeah,
still.
I just didn't know if like they were all bad.
No. And a lot of the villagers, like I said, they were just hard-working people, you know, but they were caught. It's just such a bad situation over there. They were caught in between us and the VC. One of the villagers, they had an old French fort over there that was in our area of responsibility, and every night we used to love when we got to go there, because we actually got under sleep without sleeping in the rain, or you know, under a roof, so to speak. and every now and then we'd go in there and get some rest. But in that place there, they had a little village right outside the French fort, and the chief of that village was helping us, you know, and not helping the VC. And the VC snuck into that village one night and beheaded him. So, because he was helping us. And so that's the kind of situation they were in. You know, we tried to protect him and the village, you know, but you couldn't protect them 24 hours a day. We had other duties too, so. But it was an unfortunate situation there, you know, where he got caught like that.
Let's go ahead to the tennis match.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
Y'all have anything else?
I don't know how to kind of say it, but like where y'all were stationed in Vietnam, how far was that from where y'all actually fought?
There was no front. Wherever you was at was danger, you know. And most of the time, we didn't have. They had what they called a secure area where the battalion was at, which was probably 1,200 guys, something like that. But we operated in platoons and squads, and that was probably 30 guys, 40 guys in a platoon after we'd lost a few. But that was, then from that, we'd set up one patrol base, and from that patrol base, the squads would go out and patrol and come back in. You either went on a day patrol, a night patrol, or ambush every day. Every day you went on patrols. So the night ambushes, you would normally go out of your lines right about dark, set up, didn't come back in till the next morning. Your night patrol, you usually went out about dark and came back in probably 3 or 4 hours later. And then the day patrol was probably about a 3 or 4 hour patrol. If you weren't on patrol, you was in the perimeter standing guard. And so you didn't get, I would say we averaged maybe 4 hours sleep a day. And that was tops. You didn't get a lot of sleep over there. And the sleep you got, you was either under that little old tent or something like I got there, that poncho, you spread out something to keep the heat off of you. If it was in the early part when we got there, it was dry season. And then when the monsoon started around October, September, October, it rained every day. I mean, there wasn't no way to stay dry. I smoked it when I was over there. My hands were gold as this envelope right here, maybe gold from cupping my cigarette and smoking. And when I was over there, and everybody smoked over there, but yeah, you didn't know when your last smoke was going to be. So we like to. Everybody smoked.
What else?
I want to see the pictures that's passing around. Y'all notice that the water buffalo, that's what got me out of Vietnam. That buffalo gored me, the one that's in the picture. We were on a sweep, a search and destroy sweep. These things have, people think of Vietnam as just bullets and bombs and all that, but there was a lot of hazards there. The water buffalo was one of them.
How many of those did they have just around?
How
How many
many?
did they have around?
How many? Were there a lot of buffalo just around? Were there a lot of,
Just about every farmer had one that they would plow their fields and stuff with. The kids rode them, but this one here, we was on a patrol and we was on a sweep actually, and I was checking the ID on one of the farmers there, and the buffalo, when I saw him, he was coming right at me, and I had my rifle and I couldn't get around. I might have cut a round off, but we had a lot of troops in the area, and he gored me. He put a horn through this arm and both my legs. And they put me on a chopper. They popped morphine to me and put me on a chopper. And I stayed in the hospital in Yokosuka, Japan for 3 months. And after I got out of the hospital, they were going to send me back to Vietnam. And fortunately, I had about a month and a half left to do. And fortunately, and unfortunately, because sometimes I regret I didn't go back, but then there was no guarantee I'd get to go with the same guys I had been serving with. So I didn't much want to go and start with some new guys. But they had a guy that pulled me out of the line as they were cutting my orders and said, well, we're going to keep you right here on Okinawa. You don't have but a month and a half left. So I got to stay there. And after I got home and I went to work at the plant, I almost didn't get hired on at the plant because of my wounds. And I hadn't had any problem with them, but fortunately I hadn't. But I wasn't working there but maybe 3 months, and infection started setting in one of my legs. So I had to go up to the VA hospital in Alexandria, and I spent about 3 weeks up there. And then about a year later, the same leg started giving me trouble again. And I went up there, and the doctor was talking about amputating my leg right below the knee. And he said the infection had got in the bone. And the buffaloes were so nasty, and the horns, you can see the horns on that one, in that picture. It just left a lot of infection. So I was fortunate that they were able to clear up the infection, and never had no trouble since then. But he kind of scared me when he said he was going to take it off at the below the knee there. I didn't much care for that news. But I made it home, done good. So.
Somebody else?
You and your wife were together whenever you left to go to.
No.
You got together after.
Huh?
So met at the gas station after a basketball game.
Yep. Yep.
And you were 25, she was 18?
Yeah.
So
I'm
my
24.
Okay, my age was senior high school. Back then, I mean, that's small town living. But I guess one thing I want to ask that can be a little bit controversial, and you don't have to go too much to it because I've heard a lot more than they'll ever hear from it. But when you got back, how has it affected in terms of like PTSD?
Well, I think anybody that serves in combat has a certain amount of PTSD. I've got a rating of some PTSD. I never realized I had it. I was going to the VA, and one of the doctors there recommended that I go see a counselor. So I went and saw the counselor, and we had several meetings. And he wanted to put me on some drugs, some antidepressant drugs or something like that, but I told him I wasn't going to take no drugs. So they were going to send me up to Arkansas to some kind of classes to help you with your PTSD. And I said I want to handle it myself. But it is something that is realistic. My wife was telling Adam I was kind of bad to live with for a long time. And it's just, it's something that gnaws on you, and you can't get rid of it. I mean, you can through a lot of counseling, and I've gotten better over the years, for sure. But I was a very heavy drinker, when I got out, probably up till I was 30 years old, a little older. And like I said, my wife put up with me. I fought with her at night, you know, and it was bad. But and I think, like I said, I think any man or woman that fights and goes into combat and experiences death every day, you know, I feel very fortunate that I came home, you know, all in one piece. A few holes punched in me, but I mean, I made it home. So, and there's a lot of guys that were a lot worse than me. This guy who was, can't think of his name now, but anyway, his dad was probably the most famous Marine ever. And he went into the Marines and he stepped on a landmine right in the same area where we was working at. It was a big one. It blew off both his legs, one arm, the fingers on the other, blew his eardrums out. And this guy actually became a senator in Virginia. And he fought back, but he wanted, his dad was such a famous man and he wanted to do his part too, but you can't live that life. But he suffered heavily from PTSD and ended up committing suicide. But it was a terrible thing. And like I said, it is real out there. The PTSD is real, and you just got to deal with it, and it's tough.
Anything at all?
Who was the famous soldier you're talking about that was the guy's dad?
The famous Marine you were talking about just now. His dad.
Puller, Chesty Puller was his name, and his son, I can't remember what his son's first name, but anyway, if you ever have a chance, it's a book. Fortunate Son is the name of the book, and it was written by Puller, and it's a great book to read. So.
Anything else? How many of you have had grandparents in this class that served?
Oh, good. Like I said, anybody that you see walking around, all these old people like me, and they wearing a cap like this, if you see them wearing a cover, thank them for their service. I mean, it makes them feel good, makes me feel good. You know, when I see people and they thank me, I thank people. I see veterans and I may not have nothing on that showing I'm a veteran, but I'll thank them. You know, I'll thank them for their service. And whether they were in combat or not in combat is irrelevant. You know, they did go serve their country and they done the right thing. Draftees, I don't think they even got a draft no more. I'm not sure. Do they still have a
Last
draft?
time we drafted was Vietnam.
Yeah. So, and the Marines drafted very few. I know one guy. Of all the people that I've been associated with that's been in the military, I only know one guy that was drafted in the Marines, and he got one leg blown off and another one hurt bad, but he don't regret it. He said he'd do it again. So, but that's hard to believe, but that's the kind of pride they instill in you. So I wouldn't give up none of my experiences for anything. Taught me a lot. So.
Last round, anything.
You received any benefits once you got back?
I didn't at first. I did, well, when I had to go in the hospital in VA in Alexandria, they started giving me, I think it was $15 a month for my wounds. And I missed, I don't know how many days of work I ended up missing, but it wasn't a whole lot back then. But I found out later, of course the VA don't tell you all this stuff, but they don't give you no extra information. But when I was in the hospital, I was supposed to draw 100% disability if it's service connected, which mine was, and I didn't know nothing about it, and they didn't tell me nothing about it. They just paid me my $15, and so. But I've learned since then.
Last call.
Well, I truly appreciate y'all listening to me rattle off up here.
Who else got that?